insults her. Wallahi, he wouldn't say that to someone who's maybe, doing all sorts of abhorrent stuff outside, and he's using these terms when he gets angry to his wife. وهكذا.
No.
So what comes out of your mouth, it goes a very, very, very long way. Very long way. Wallahi, it can destroy a woman, it can destroy a man. Especially now when you speak ill about her looks, the way she, and it can have a huge effect, wallahi, what you utter with your tongue.
لا شك لا شك حتى الله عز وجل, when he spoke about the word, he'd say فأثابهم الله بما قالوا. Allah granted them reward for the words they said. And on the other hand, وَلُعِنُوا بِمَا قَالُوا. People were cursed because of what they said. This ayah goes alongside the hadith that the Shaykh mentioned. One word that a person utters, not knowing the consequences of it, can land him into Jahannam. So the advice would be, make a tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal, and reform and reconcile and fix these relationships. Own up wherever you need to own up. Apologize for what has taken or what has been said that is wrong, and reform, fix the relationship. No, it's not too late. People are still alive. As long as you're hearing the message, you're alive, you're in the time to rectify these relationships. Now, otherwise, on the Day of Judgment, there is something called al-qantarah, and that is just before the people enter Jahannam. And it is bayn al-jannati wal-nar, as the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. Some of the ulama mention that people have passed the sirat. They're on the other side, before the doors of the paradise. Al-qantarah. Al-qantarah is a place where all your dealings and your relationships with others are going to be sorted out right there. So the husband and the wife issue, a person with his business partner, whatever it is, all dealings and relationships are going to be sorted out there. And then the hadith mentions that if a person had failed in these matters, there may be a chance from there to be thrown in Jahannam. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. So, no.
Even subhanAllah, when the Shaykh mentioned, وَلُعِنُوا بِمَا قَالُوا, Allah also says, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ. I think this is very relevant and important here. The mockery and the jokes that we see online. People making fun and joking about their parents and the way they do pranks on them and whatever have you. And he's thinking that, I'm actually being good to my parents by making them go viral, when in reality there's a غاية سوء الأدب. It's the pinnacle of how they mistreat their parents. Sometimes you see guys tripping up their parents, making fun of them, and the parent in essence doesn't really know what's happening, subhanAllah. That treatment and that dealing with the parents, and which is, subhanAllah, when it comes to mockery and making fun and jokes about, I thought I'd mentioned that, amongst all the Shaykh mentioned.
And that's concerning the youth of our time, and when the youth are not reforming or becoming better than the generations to come of Muslims, they're sort of they're in trouble. So it's important with the youth that we focus on them. And for the youth, this is why I wanted to mention the family, because it's the essential building block for a young person.
Right.
For example, myself, I see what my father does, what my mother does, and I do. And subhanAllah, with the youth, another influence for them is their friends, is their environment, and the mannerisms that they have in these environments. And I'm speaking about the younger generation here, the generation that are in school, that are in university, and how they interact with each other. Because this, these pranksters, for example, maybe they learn it from each other, and it's something that's accepted on their level. So what about the manners of between friends, between young people, and what's the good environment? How does the good environment foster good manners? And let's talk about the friends for a little bit, inshallah.
No. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Al-mar'u ala dini khalili. A person is upon the deen of his friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. فَلْيَنْظُرْ meaning be very careful, be cautious of who you befriend. Because the one you're going to befriend, whatever he upholds of manners and words, most likely it's going to rub onto you, and eventually you'll become like him, right? حتى Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, I forgot in which book, but at the very beginning he sets out a very important observation. He says anyone who is among a corrupt environment, give him a few days and he becomes corrupt like them. And if I sat among 200 people that are clean shaven, and I was there among them for a week, by the 7th, 8th day, I'm clean shaven like them, right? It's gonna rub from them to you these these matters, words, dealings, whatever it is. So that's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his mercy towards the youth is that he taught us this hadith and told us, be careful who you befriend and who you walk with. And the parents play a big role in this, because it is important for the parents to also look into the friends of their youngsters, their own children, who they hang out with, who do they bring to the house, where do they go. Today the parents are so distracted and so busy with their phones and their own friends that they don't care where their child is, who does he hang out with, who he's messaging. Today it's a lot easier, you didn't have to see someone. You message enough and your manners become like the one you've messaged. There's an issue. So now, to see where did it all come from, someone's not doing his job right. Someone's not doing his job right. A child is born upon al-fitrah. Well, fitrah would lead a person to goodness. So if a person has become corrupt, a child has become corrupt, we need to stop and say, come, where's his parents? Did they do what Allah Azza wa Jal obligated upon them to do? And that is nurturing this child and fostering. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Ali radiallahu anhu says, you save your children from the fire by teaching them what Allah commanded, what Allah forbid. So we say to the parents, hold them accountable. Did you teach your children? Did you fulfill that responsibility of Allah? Most likely not. If he's turned out to be someone that has extremely rebelled and become transgressed in the community and ended up in all sorts of problems and troubles with people. فَنَعَمْ Allahu Alam, that's the idea.
I think it's also important to touch on that which one keeps staring at. Right? Once upon a time, our parents, they would say to us, when you go outside, make sure you don't hang around with so-and-so. And we would think that this is the only way that my child will get corrupted once he leaves the house, the people that he hangs around with. Wallahi, the dynamics have changed. Thinking that this is the only way that my child or my son or my daughter is going to get corrupted, those days are long gone. And that is because a young child can sit in between those four walls inside of my house, inside of our homes, and have access to more filth and evil than if they were to go outside. Right? How many people will my child run into if they were to go outside? 20, 30, let's just say 40, maybe even 100. But you're inside of those four walls. That's why they call it Facebook friends. Facebook friends. They have access to so much. Right? What the eyes can't see, the heart won't desire.
No.
Right? What the eyes can't see, the heart won't desire. SubhanAllah, forget about looking at haram. I've come across statements of the earlier scholars, right? They would say, don't look at someone who is lazy. Why would they say don't look at someone that is lazy? Subconsciously begins to creep in. And eventually you will start behaving like that the more you look at something. And then they would say, go and look at so-and-so. When someone's iman is dropping, go and sit with so-and-so and look at him. Because there are people, when you look at them, right, it increases you in faith, right? It reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يُذَكِّرُونَكَ بِاللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. So how many a time, wallahi, have I come across someone because of what they kept on looking at, they ended up corrupting. And one time I remember an auntie called me and she said, speak to my daughter. I said, what's the issue, auntie? She said to me, my daughter is asking me to buy her a mini skirt. I've never ever wore a mini skirt. I've always worn the jilbab. Her sisters have always worn the jilbab. But she is now asking to dress in this particular way. So how did this come about? Constantly on TikTok, watching these ladies that are dressed a certain way. And then you have the brothers as well. They're watching these rappers and these musicians and whatever have you. And then all of a sudden he sees himself walking and he doesn't realize that this is something that is completely abnormal and people are looking at you extremely, differently, right? The stuff that we look at is as dangerous as those that we hang around with. What the eyes can't see, the heart won't desire.
And that comes back to the parents. It reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, كلكم راع, and each of you, we are all shepherds and we are responsible for our flock. And inshallah ta'ala, if that's a piece of advice for the parents to monitor what the children are looking at, to to be involved, be interested.
Wallahi, you know, sometimes, subhanAllah, we hand over these gadgets to our children because we feel, look, they're going to miss out, everyone else has it. I understand that, that's perfectly fine. But at the end of the day, that's our responsibility also to monitor what they're doing. لا تزول قدم عبد حتى يسأل عن أربعين. One's feet will not move on Yawm al-Qiyamah until he's asked about 4 things. One of them is عن ماله, his wealth. How did he earn it? What did he spend it on? I understand, auntie, uncle, why you're buying these gadgets for them, but it's our responsibility that we put tabs on there, ensuring that they don't access certain things. And sometimes we hand over these gadgets because we're busy. We're glued to our phones. We're glued to all of these Netflix and whatever have you, Hollywood, Bollywood, Somaliwood, Arabwood, yani there's different series now. We don't want to be distracted, so we hand it over to them. Wallahi, as young as 3 years of age, maybe even 2, just so they can be distracted. Wallahi, that becomes their third parent. That becomes their third parent, whether we like it or not. Our children in our homes are being brought up by a third parent. And that's the unfortunate state.
You know, when they speak about a successful family, the first ingredient or the first step to a successful, righteous family is for the parents to understand their responsibility. What Allah Azza wa Jal has entrusted them with. Then all the steps you can mention later. That's why the hadith concerning a person who neglects his responsibility were tough, were extreme. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Man mata yawma yamutu wa huwa ghashul li ra'iyatih. The one who dies having cheated. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam called it cheated his responsibility. He cheated his family. Heck, he left them doing al-haram, and he wasn't bothered to say a word of advice to them. That's cheating. هذا نعم. والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم would say a person like this will not smell the fragrance of the paradise. If he doesn't smell the fragrance of the paradise, he won't see the paradise until Allah Azza wa Jal bestows His mercy upon him afterwards. Like the idea is, that's the first step in a successful righteous family, for the father and the mother to understand their responsibility. And then for them to behave themselves. Well, why is parenting very difficult today? I'll tell you why parenting is difficult. You see, a lot of people would think, wallah, it's difficult because the day and age we live in, or the technology and the social media that's out there. How can I control my son? How can I control my daughter? They've slipped out of my hand. That's not the reason. The reason is because the modeling of this parenting is flawed. The father and the mother are not willing to change their own ways. They're not willing to look into their words and refine them and speak good words. They're not willing to look into their own friends and cut out what's bad and keep what's good. They don't want to change, so the children will remain as they are. That's why it's difficult, because it requires a lot for you to change. That's why Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. He said, save yourself from the fire, then your family from the fire. Why did He mention yourself first before your family? Because how can you save others if you're not on a path that saves you from the fire? So if you're on a path that is pleasing to Allah, you'll be bi'idhnillah safe from the fire. Now you could be an example to others to save them from the fire. So it requires a lot from the person. That's why they say, the best parenting model out there is for you to put on a great example for your own children.
It reminds me also, subhanAllah, the Hajjat al-Wada', the farewell Hajj of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam abolished al-riba, the first riba that he started with was, Inna awwala riban ada'u riba al-Abbas. Because Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, right, the kind of riba that they would deal with is, if someone's appointed time came now to pay back the debt, he would say, Ataqdi am turbi? Shall I give you an extended period? Right, so they end up giving more, or are you going to pay back right now? The Messenger started with his own uncle. Like imagine what the people would have said if he told everyone to stop and then his uncle is continuing. He specifically mentioned him to show that, look, we're starting with ourselves and we are going to set the tone. Allah, subhanAllah, how many times I came across a parent who says to me, please tell my daughter to get off Snapchat. I would ask the auntie, do you have TikTok on your phone? But she says, yeah, but it's like a smoker telling his son, don't smoke, and he's smoking right in front of him. What do you want him to do? And this is the role model, this is the person that he looks up to. Right? And I know it's hard. Wallahi, I know it's hard. right? I understand the difficulty and the hardships that parents have to go through, but everything requires a sacrifice.
No.
We can't expect to achieve excellence and reach loftiness if we're not going to make these sacrifices. Like, look at the lives of, the scholars of the past, Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Malik. Behind every successful man is a woman, right?
Yeah. Allahu and subhanAllah, and the young man or the young woman, they grow up and they have these bad mannerisms and bad interactions, and as the stories as we just mentioned now, and then subhanAllah, the parents, they go to excuses and they start to blame things, when in fact, as Shaykh Bakr said, they did not take the responsibility.
No.
So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that easy for our parents and for our up and coming parents to take that responsibility to lead from the front, inshallah ta'ala. On the next topic, this is a pressing matter in the community, and it is regarding disputes between Muslims. And subhanAllah, when the sun's out, everyone's very well and speaking well of each other, but then when it's cloudy and there's a bit of friction, subhanAllah, we tend to throw the manners out the door when it comes to disputes, and it's me versus him, and it's my honor versus his honor. And subhanAllah, when it comes to disputes, and how important is it to have manners when it comes to disputes, especially when it's a Muslim in dispute with another Muslim?
Wallah, I'll start off with a story between Al-Layth ibn Sa'd and Imam Malik, rahimahullah. Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, he was a humongous scholar, right? And it's also argued that he was similar to Imam Malik in knowledge. But he moved to Egypt, and he was al-faqih in Egypt. And he had a dispute with Imam Malik on a very important matter, and that is Amal Ahl al-Madinah. With Imam Malik, there is one of the evidences of Islam, one of the evidences is Amal Ahl al-Madinah, what the people of al-Madinah did. So if the people of al-Madinah had done a certain action, then that could be used as a proof and an evidence for its validity and authentication. Al-Imam al-Layth ibn Sa'd did not agree to this principle. It is a source. He did not agree to it. And there was a quarrel between them. حتى أن الإمام الليث ibn Sa'd mentioned a few things degrading about Imam Malik. But eventually, when Imam Malik was preparing his daughter for marriage, Al-Layth ibn Sa'd in Egypt sent him a camel load of perfume. He sent him a camel load of perfume, because in Egypt it was known at the time there were perfumes there, the people would go there to source their perfumes and so on. Despite the intense disagreement between both of them, he sent, when he knew his daughter is getting married and he's preparing her for marriage, he sent him a camel load. وِقْرَ بَعِيرٍ مِنَ الْعَطَرِ. He sent him a camel load. As much as we differed, the love is still there. The love is still there. He sent him a camel load. This camel load, it's enough to prepare his daughter. He'll sell from it. He'll make money from it. He'll pay debts from that camel. A lot of things are set up for it. So the idea is, no problems. We dispute among one another in certain matters that require for it to be clarified, but that manners with each other must always be upheld. And that love must also be upheld. And most importantly, we do not boycott each other. Because that's where it becomes troubling. No.
I believe this is a phenomenon, what the Shaykh just mentioned right now. Whether maybe online, I really, really wish at times people who ascribe themselves to knowledge can see when we can perhaps overlook that which is ijtihadi, that which is open for discussion. Sometimes a lot of the disputes and a lot of things that people say about one another, it doesn't leave the following points taken out of context, unverified information, right? Ijtihadi related issues, where you try to attempt to get the right answer. We're not talking about issues that are non-negotiable in our religion. There are more issues that I believe in today's day and age that brothers who think the same when it comes to the aqeedah, you could perhaps say, right? They differ on issues of ijtihad more than anything else. And it causes what? Severe boycotts, separations and whatever have you. And there's a way to go about it. Sometimes you may have a heated discussion with your brother, and then you see him, subhanAllah, going around telling people, oh, he doesn't accept advice. He doesn't accept. Habib, you had a back and forth. You may give your advice and then he counters that, وهكذا. It's a back and forth, right? It's important that we know how to really deal with a lot of these ijtihadi issues that has caused so much, issues, or so many issues between brothers in that regard. I think it's worth mentioning a very important story. It's a little bit different to the story or the incident that Shaykh Abu Bakr mentioned, of how Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu dealt with someone who infuriated him. One day an individual entered upon Umar al-Khattab, sought permission to enter, and then they allowed him to come through. And look what he says, right, about Umar al-Khattab, the audacity. يَبْنَ الْخَطَّابِ, right? إِنَّكَ لَا تُعْطِينَ الْجَزْلِ أي العطاء الكثير. You don't give us enough. وَلَا تَحْكُمُ بَيْنَنَا بِالْعَدْلِ. And also you don't judge fairly when it comes to our disputes. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu became furious, right? فَهَمَّ أَنْ يَقْعَ بِهِ, like he wanted to strike him. Al-Hurr ibn al-Qais, who was from amongst those who used to sit closely in the gatherings of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, was close to him, right? He said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at how that individual addressed Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Look at Al-Hurr ibn al-Qais. O leader of the believers, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَالَ لِنَبِيهِ. Allah said to his prophet, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Pardon, command with good, and turn away from the ignorant. فَإِنَّ هَذَا مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. This person here is from the ignorant, right? SubhanAllah, Ibn Abbas was narrating the hadith. He said, the moment Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu heard this advice, فَمَا جَاوَزْهَا عُمَرْ وَكَانَ وَقَّافًا عِنْدَ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. Whenever Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu would hear the command or the prohibition from Allah Azza wa Jal, he would stop, no ifs, no buts. This is what Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala was known for. Sometimes we have disputes, our emotions get in the way. How do we deal with this kind of situation? Sometimes we say, Akhi, Allah is telling you something right, and then you respond back by saying, Akhi, I don't care. Or you respond in that very vicious way, very inappropriate way.
It's the heat of the moment.
Heat of the moment, I think this is a very important incident to keep in mind when these disputes take place. Look how Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala responded. He stopped there and then. No ifs and no buts. Inshallah.
And to take a step back and have the good manners and to exercise that's the first step for reconciliation, for rahmah, isn't it?
لا حتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم says إيش الحديث يعني read the Quran as long as you're all in agreement. فإن اختلفتم فقوموا. Once you dispute and disagree upon certain matters, get up. خلاص, leave the discussion, walk away. A lot of the problems could be sorted if our intention in the discussion was a good intention. The good intention is when we discuss a matter, both me and the one I'm discussing with should be intending al-haq. If we intend to reach al-haq in this matter, Allah Azza wa Jal will place barakah in this dispute here, and inshallah ta'ala it will end up somewhere good. But if both of us are discussing a matter and everyone yantasir liqawlih, I'm only debating so I can prove my point right over your point. This is the kind of tanazu', dispute, that we are forbidden from. When Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا, don't dispute and quarrel among one another. The ulama rahimahumullah, they said this is the type of dispute that is haram. The dispute in where I want to prove my point over yours. I don't care if mine is right or wrong. The only thing is, my point, I'm right, you're wrong. And this is unfortunate. You see it in the communities, you see it among the brothers. People with 1% knowledge in his brain. Heck, he wants to, I'm right, and you're wrong. Oh, I don't care what the proofs are, because my sheikh taught me such and such. I'm not in no position to even discuss with my sheikh, but I'll take what he said and I'll cause problems and troubles with it.
It comes to sitting with a made-up mind,
Subhanallah. This is another issue. لكن if one party and the second party they intended نصرة الحق, Allah Azza wa Jal places barakah in this. The ulama differed among one another. والصحابة differed among one another. How come there were no fallouts between them, no punching and shoving between them, and no cursing between them? Why? How the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when they discussed a matter or they debated a matter, it was al-haq. No one had a hawa that he was following. No one had a kind of desire or an opinion he stuck to that he wanted to prove his point over others. It didn't happen like that. And this is khilaf among the Sahaba. And it did not change anything concerning their relationship and the love and the respect they have with one another. No.
Even the verse in Surah An-Nisa, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَابْعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. And here's the key, right? We talked about the intention of wanting, right, to do what is best. The intention goes a long way. He said, إِنْ يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Like, if you see or you sense a dispute now between husband and wife, bring out a party from this side and then a party from the other. Look what Allah says, إِنْ يُرِيدَ. If they have the intention of wanting to rectify, Allah will give them success. He will give them tawfiq.
Subhanallah.
Look how the intention goes a very long way. But if, the mafhum is that if they don't have that, akhi, forget about it. This is why, wallahi, sometimes people ask me for discussions, debates, and right, they want to talk about certain dini related issue. I always look at the masalih and the mafasid. No. Weighing between the pros and the cons. And I think this is very, very important. And I sit with people of different persuasions and leanings across the board. If I see this individual to be sincere, perhaps we can get somewhere with that discussion. However, if I sense from you that you are someone that is going to be volatile, or I'm not even going to entertain it, even if that individual has the same aqeedah as me. Because you find people like this on every side of the spectrum. You're somebody like that, what's the benefit that we're going to get out of this sitting? But when you see that individual is genuinely trying and he's attempting to find the truth, we can sit down, inshallah ta'ala, we can talk, we can have these discussions. You see this on Twitter all the time, Shaykh. I was showing you, I think the other day you saw, right, on TikTok, Twitter, people just want to get at one another and they're expecting you to respond. Literally, they're waiting, they can't wait for you to respond. This is not the setting to be having these discussions. There's a way to go about it, right? And there are many sincere people out there that you can have discussions with. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless them.
Alhamdulillah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist us in rectifying our relationships and our mannerisms. And just as you said, you mentioned the ayah, if we sincerely seek to recompense our manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely assist us. What are your parting advices, Ya Mashaykh, for the individual? What should the individual focus on? What's a quick, simple thing to do so that we can improve all of our mannerisms and interactions with everyone?
If there's any word at this very moment, perhaps be a hadith. Some of the scholars, they mentioned about this hadith that if this was the only hadith narrated in good manners, it would have been enough. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّ الْمَرْأَ لَيُدْرِكُ بِحُسْنِ خُلُقِهِ دَرَجَةَ الصَّائِمِ الْقَائِمِ. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, an individual may reach the high levels of the one who prays the nights and fasts the day through his good manners. And الحديث would even mention الظمأ في الهواجر والصلاة في الليل. Imagine praying the nights, especially now here we're in Australia, freezing cold. You get up, you make wudu, you pray every single night, salah, you're extremely cold. Then imagine the long days of summer that you're fasting, you're feeling of dhama and al-hawajir, you're feeling extreme thirst at the throat, and you just push on to fast and your energy is gone by the end of the day, and you're doing all this so you can achieve a level and Allah Azza wa Jal. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, through your good manners, without doing this fasting and this prayer in that type of manner, you would reach that same level. And I say to you this, that I didn't think, and we're most definite, that we don't have a chance to reach the type of ibadah and worship that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum was salaf were upon. From salat, siyam, zakat, jihad, these people beat us in these matters. So we look now, perhaps the young youth or the believer, when he hears these stories of a salaf or Sahaba in their worship, he says, wallah, I got no hope. How am I going to reach them? شوف هذا الحديث gives us hope. بحسن الخلق. Fix your manners. Fix your manners. Watch your words and how you speak with people. Watch your dealings and how you deal with others. Uphold what's right. Give the people their haqq, their right. Don't shortchange anyone. Don't steal anyone. Look after yourself. Good manners. It's good for your mental health, good for your emotional health, good for the physical well-being, good in Allah Azza wa Jal. It's all good. There's nothing bad about good manners. And at the end, what a bonus. درجة القائم الصائم reaches that high level عند الله عز وجل. والله أعلم.
Allah يبارك فيك.
أياك.
You know, one of the best definitions that I came across when it came to good manners in the Arabic language is أن تعامل الناس بمثل ما تحب أن يعاملوك به وفق الشريعة. That you treat the people the same way you like to be treated, as long as in accordance to the Sharia. And I believe this is جامع مانع, very comprehensive, and it cuts out any misunderstandings, right? And when we look at حسن الخلق, right, and this definition now, and we put it in line with when the Messenger ﷺ said, ما من شيء في الميزان أثقل من حسن الخلق. There is nothing more heavier on the scale of good deeds than good manners, right? Is this just good manners now with the people, or is it also good manners with Allah? And I think this is very, very important that we touch on. When we talk about good manners, it's only right to speak about the manners with Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why even the poet, he said, فَأَوَّلًا رَاعِ مَعَ اللَّهِ الْأَدَبِ بِتَرْكِ الْإِثْمِ وَبِفِعْلِ مَا وَجَبْ. The first, when he goes through a manduma, a poem of etiquette, the first one that he started off with was the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal, having good manners with Allah by leaving of sins and doing that which He's obligated upon you. Right? And the Messenger he himself said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I've only been sent in order to establish the best of etiquettes. Sometimes you hear people saying, Wallahi, the non-Muslims have better etiquettes than the Muslims. Right? They mean by it, or because he comes early and we come right, what do we call it? A Muslim time, يعني, huh? And then we make jokes about it and whatever have you. You tell him come for the urus or for the nikah at 1 p.m. We end up coming 4 p.m. يعني. It's but that's not right. When you think about it, you know, because the etiquette with Allah Azza wa Jal is the most important etiquette. And then you have the etiquette with the creation, right? So I think this is very, very important that we perhaps mention the etiquette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfilling the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal, and then also the rights of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the parents, hakada, and then the rest of the best of etiquette, inshaAllah ta'ala, that we can adorn ourselves with. Inshallah ta'ala, I will be releasing 5 hours worth of etiquette. I went through a manduma. It'll be available on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days, hopefully, inshallah. Went through a poem, 82 best, or the best of characteristics and traits, taken from a nice poem. Inshallah.
We'll be looking out for that, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan for your time. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist us, to allow us to have the best of manners and the best of etiquettes with our Muslim brothers and sisters, and also with the non-Muslims, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى.